Judge and timer ready? A raspberry, a strawberry, and a miniature mango. No, not the recipe for a delicious smoothie, but rather the protagonist of one of my third grade writing assignments. Together, our three heroes must stop the evil Plum and his attempts to destroy the local library and replace it with a mall. For those of you wondering, yes, I was woke on capitalism from a young age. Much to my dismay, however, I've found that as I've gotten older, I've also gotten less creative. Where I could once come up with multiple story ideas almost instantaneously, I now need 2 weeks and several Google searches to come up with something that won't make my teachers cry. I guess I'm just going to have to live with the fact that I won't be the next Shakespeare. Unfortunately for society, however, it's becoming increasingly unlikely that there ever will be another Shakespeare, as creativity over time has been declining. And with a trait this important, we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening, and how do we stop it? So today, let's first take a minute to learn more about this creativity crisis, before we then make some connections between its causes and effects, and finally, we'll work together to create some solutions of our own. With a trait as subjective as creativity, it can seem like it would be hard to define, let alone measure. I mean, I will reluctantly concede that my 8-year-old literary escapades were a bit on the weird side, but who's to say they weren't creative? When we think of creativity, we usually picture big C creativity. That's that flash of genius that led Leonardo da Vinci to paint the Mona Lisa. It's important, but ultimately it's only one aspect of creativity. The other aspect of creativity is little c creativity. That's, Dr. James C. Kaufman notes, our ability to learn new things and make connections between pre-existing concepts in our head. Little c creativity is what allows us to solve day-to-day problems in our lives, like forgetting a spoon for lunch and fashioning one out of tinfoil. Both of these kinds of creativity can actually be measured through the Torrance test, designed by psychologist Dr. Ellis Paul Torrance. The Torrance test measures creativity through 4 different things: the number of original ideas an individual can come up with, how original they are, how well they connect, and how much they can be elaborated upon. Dr. Kyung-Hee Kim, a researcher at William & Mary, analyzed the results of over 300,000 of these Torrance tests from all periods in time and found that until 1990, creativity had actually been increasing. But since 1990, creativity has been decreasing at an even steeper rate since 2008. Dr. Kim's research found that we as Americans are less original than before. We think less critically and less in depth than any previous generation has. All of which begs the question, why is this happening? The leading school of thought is that creativity is declining because of, well, school. In a 2017 follow-up to her original creativity crisis report, Dr. Kim noted that the pressure of high-stakes testing and standardized tests in schools was what was driving creativity down, for a multitude of reasons, starting with the fact that on high-stakes tests, students aren't encouraged to take risks for fear of being wrong. And when you never take risks, you never learn new ways of doing things, which is what creativity is ultimately about. Beyond that, high-stakes testing has promoted a culture of conformity in our schools because students spend so much of their classroom time dedicated to studying the same standardized curriculum to do well on the same tests as students around the nation. There's no room for individuality and consequently creativity. Even beyond that, Dr. Kim notes that our minds have been narrowed as traditional school curriculum with social studies and arts has been replaced by teaching students to memorize packets of formulas and tricks to regurgitate onto a 3-hour test taken on a Saturday morning in a dimly lit high school. And this is so deeply problematic because creativity is taking on an increasingly important role in our world. Take the medical field, for example. It's not one we would typically associate with creativity, but it's one that relies heavily on it. Dr. Jay Baruch, an associate professor of emergency medicine at Brown University, has found that creativity is integral to his work because it's what allows him to not only diagnose patients correctly, but also come up with a treatment plan for them that'll work. And medicine is only one aspect of society. Across the board, our ability to innovate and problem solve both rely on creativity. Dr. Tucker Marion, an associate professor at Northeastern's DeMoore McKim School of Business, notes that creativity is the key component in innovation. For problem solving, Adobe conducted a study with college graduates and found that 85% of them say that creativity is critical to problem solving in their careers. And we need to be able to innovate and problem solve if we want society to progress. We need to be creative if we want to come up with innovative technologies to improve our quality of life. We need to be creative if we want to find cures for diseases like cancer and save countless lives. We need to be creative if we want to come up with a plan to mitigate the effects of climate change and save our planet. And I know we all want all of that. And all that improvement starts with creativity. So how do we go about being creative? On a much broader societal level, our educational system desperately needs an overhaul. And we have to start with allowing students to make mistakes and fail. Because having the freedom to do so is one of the most important things we can do to nurture creativity. Louis R. Mobley, founder of IBM's Executive School, found that when he presented bad ideas as building blocks to good ideas and didn't chastise executives for making mistakes, the number of usable ideas they came up with for the company increased dramatically because they no longer feared any negative consequences for the work they did. They were more willing to voice and even entertain ideas they would have never previously thought of. Even beyond that, there's things that we as individuals can do. And one of the best things we can do is to just learn. Because creativity, Professor Jonathan Plucker found, can be learned. And psychologist Dr. Robert Epstein notes that the best way to learn creativity is just to learn new things, because that's what provides your brain with the connections necessary to solve problems. The progress of our world depends on creativity. When our creativity declines, so does our capacity to innovate, which is why today I invite you all to join me in allowing myself to make mistakes, taking risks, and learning to be creative. Somehow I ended up getting a good grade on that fruit story, even though my teacher was a little bit weirded out. But more importantly than that, she noted on the rubric, I never would have thought to write a story like this. A very unique and creative idea. Thank you.